Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to the School of Personal Finance. In this video, I'm going to tell you how to protect yourself from the biggest threat your retirement accounts have ever known. And no, it is not the coronavirus. It is you. Let's get to it. So with the decline in pensions over the last decade or so, and just everything trending in that direction, the onus is becoming more and more on you to save and provide for yourself in retirement. That puts a lot of pressure on you. That means that when you walk out the door ready to retire, your biggest asset and your biggest income generator is probably going to be your 401k plan or your 403b plan, your IRAs, your retirement assets that are invested in various markets. Yes, you will have, hopefully, Social Security making up a piece of that income pie, but the majority of it is probably going to come from these retirement accounts. The number one factor that's going to determine how much money you accumulate in these accounts for retirement, besides the fact that you actually have to put money into it in order for it to grow, but the number one factor is going to be the asset allocation. And the sad truth is that most people just don't know how to create a correct asset allocation. And it ends up putting them in bad spots. Like when we have market turmoil, when there's volatility and they're invested too aggressively and they see that they're losing money that they put into this account, they get nervous, they panic, and they sell out at the wrong time. And it's so common for all of us to do this. When we look at the balances in our retirement accounts, we see it go up and up and up, and we think that that's real money, that money is ours. And then when you see it go down, you always remember that high water mark, and you think, holy cow, I just lost $20,000, $30,000, because you're still looking at that, you have that picture in your head of that high number that you hit. But the reality is, the markets go up and down. They don't go up in a straight line. You're gonna lose money from the highs at some point, and it's gonna feel like crap, and you're not gonna be happy about it, and you're gonna get a statement, you're gonna be like, oh my God, I lost all this money. But the truth is, that's how it works. It happens, and it's gonna happen, it's gonna continue to happen, and you gotta go with the flow. And over the long run, markets tend to go up. So it's important to be educated and to put together that correct asset allocation that matches you. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different risk tolerance, a risk appetite for this stuff. So you have to really look inward and figure out what is right for you and then trust it and go for it. And when things get out of whack, you rebalance it. So if stocks go way up and now you have too much stock exposure, you sell some and you move them over to the bonds to get it back in line with the asset allocation that is correct for you. I've seen it time and time again where people have easy access to their 401k plan. They log into the website, they go in, they say, you know what, I think the market's going to go down. I'm not feeling great about the market. I want to get out. And then I'll get back in when things look better. And it usually never works out because it's impossible to time. Yes, you could get lucky. You might sell at the right time and then you have a downturn in the market. But then how do you decide when to get back in? There's so many people who back in March decided that this is too painful. I don't want anything to do with this stuff and I need to get out to preserve this nest egg that I've accumulated. And look at what happened. We've had the fastest rebound in history and it's crazy. And I'm not talking down to people when I say this. I do this as well. It's impossible to not have those feelings and those emotions. On March 23rd, I remember it very clearly. It felt terrible. I wanted to sell everything that I own and run for the hills. But it turned out to be the lowest day in this stock market and we've gone nowhere but up since then. So if you decided to sell then how do you decide when to get back in? Do you wait and wait and wait? Because if you did that this time, then you're left holding the bag and you're sitting in cash. And like, how do you get back in now? I want this video to act as a guide for you to refer to in the future when you are thinking about making changes to your 401k plan. Because really, so much of it is psychological and you have to get over that hump. And once you put that to the side and you get to more the technical aspect of it, it's really just a matter of following the rules. So I'm gonna walk you through that today. So the first thing that I want to discuss is I want you to be real with yourself and on a scale of 1 to 10 to write a number down how much you actually know about the stock market or about investing, about asset allocation. When I throw those words out there, do you curl up in the ball and cringe and hate the thought of it? Or is it something that you're interested in, that you want to learn more about? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you actually know about that and how comfortable are you doing it on your own? If on a scale of 1 to 10 you're a 2 and you have zero interest in it, then you really need to seek some guidance because it's just too important. So next, after you determine if you really give a crap or not, the next thing that you have to do is figure out your risk tolerance. And all that means is how comfortable are you with the ups and downs in the market? How much risk are you willing to take? Like in March, when things were at its lowest, did you feel sick to your stomach? Did you lose sleep over it? Or did you really just understand that, I'm not touching this money for a long time, I could live with it? How much risk are you willing to take? Because if you're 100% invested in the stock market, there are times in your life, my life, when it's going to be down 30%, 40%, and it's going to feel terrible. And now on my website, schoolofpersonalfinance.com, I have a resources and quizzes tab where if you go there, the first one is a risk tolerance questionnaire. You could click on that. There's 13 questions, and at the end of it, it will give you a score and show you where you fall as far as your risk tolerance goes. It's important to understand your risk tolerance so that you're comfortable with how you're invested. So then when we have a big downturn in the market, you're not overexposed for your risk. You don't panic and say, oh my God, I cannot handle this, I need to get out. You don't want to be in that position. And then the third step that I want you to do, again, keeping with the psychological aspect of investing, is I want you to write down how many years it is going to be until you actually start drawing on this money. Obviously, it's going to be an estimate because you don't know exactly when you're going to retire, but just write down how many years you think it will be till you start drawing on it. And a major thing to keep in mind is that once you retire and you start drawing on the money, it's not like you pull it all out at that time. This money is going to last you for a very long time. So even if you're going to retire at 65 and say you're 40 right now, that would be 25 years before you start drawing. But at 65, you might have another 25 years to live after that where you're going to continue drawing on this money. So in that case, you really have like a 50-year time horizon. So at 65, you can't think, well, at that point, I'm just going to move it all to cash or to bonds or to some kind of safe and guaranteed investment, because you still need the growth to last you for the additional 25 years after you retire. And now while you're writing that number down, it's a great idea to just Google a long-term history, a chart of the stock market since 1920 or 1915 and pull it up. Because if you have 20 years before you're even touching that money, then you could look over any 20-year period over the last 100 years and see how the market has done during that rolling 20-year period. And odds are it has really gone up. There have been a few instances like the Great Depression of '29 where it really took like 30 years for it to make a new high. But for the most part, the market does move up, especially when you zoom out and you look over a long time horizon. Because even if we go back and we look at like the crash of 1987, there were people jumping out of windows that day. There was chaos. But if you look at it on the long-term chart, it's like a little blip. If you got out that day and didn't get back in, the market went straight up after that. If you look at the dot-com bubble, it looks like a blip on the radar. If you look at the Great Recession, people were losing their homes. Everybody's going into foreclosure. Lehman Brothers closes down, unemployment going up. It was a terrible time to go through. But if you look at it on the chart, if you were to get out when it felt the worst, you would have missed another great run up. And it's playing out that way with Corona right now. Even though this one, it's like on steroids. It's like we dropped 30% so quickly and then we made it back even quicker. And it doesn't feel right to me. But again, who the hell knows? It's like you have to just take a step back and look at it on a longer term time horizon, zoom out, take a deep breath, and realize that you're not touching this money for a while. Just go with it. It's so hard to time the market and to make these decisions, thinking that you're going to outsmart, that you know better about what's going on and that the market's going to go down, so you're going to sell and then you're going to get back in once it feels better. Just usually doesn't work out that way. And 9 times out of 10, that's how people really blow up their retirement accounts, and they end up with much less than what they could have had if they just stayed the course and didn't mess with it. And then the fourth thing that I want you to do is I want you to take the number 120 and subtract your age from it. So for example, if you're 40 years old, 120 minus 40 is 80. And this is a good starting point for how much stocks you should have in your overall allocation in your retirement accounts. So now you could scale this up a little bit or scale it down a little bit depending on your risk tolerance that you figured out when you went and took the risk tolerance questionnaire. If you found yourself to be very risky or that you could tolerate large fluctuations in the market and you feel comfortable with it, then you could definitely juice this up to 90% in your retirement account. Or if you're conservative, you could scale it down to 70% or 65% if you're going to be more comfortable than that. But it's just a good starting point as to how much money you should have in stocks compared to bonds. 401ks, they have come a long way in the last 10 years. 403b plans as well, 457 plans. The explosion of target date retirement funds, it's become a great thing for investors. It makes it very simple. But even with those, you want to understand what is under the hood of that target date fund. So all they are is they give you the number that you could choose that coincides with the closest date that you plan on retiring. So again, if you're 40 years old and you're going to retire 25 years from now, then you would choose a 2045 target date retirement fund. And that could be a great option if it's available to you. If your plan has that option with a low expense ratio, a low cost, then you might be able to just choose that one fund and be done. But what you want to do is you want to look a little bit deeper. You want to understand what's actually going on inside of that target date retirement fund instead of just choosing it and saying, I'm done. Because it might be more aggressive than you are comfortable with or that you want it to be. Or if you have a high risk tolerance, it might not be aggressive enough. So in that case, you could create your own allocation, your own mix of what's available to you, or you could choose that target date retirement fund and then just add in some more aggressive funds in there with it. And you just want to make sure that you're diversified. That's the real point to this, is you want to make sure that you have a little bit of everything so that you take part. You never know what's going to be good and what's going to be bad in the market. If we look at one of these charts of like the best performing asset classes, I actually have one on my website that I'll show you real quick. If we look at the asset class returns, this is from 2005 to 2019. So like large cap stocks are the orange. You could see that they're somewhat in the middle. We had 3 high years here. 2019 was a good year for them. What you do notice is cash is typically on the bottom. I mean, there are some years where cash is going to, like 2008, cash was one of the best assets that you could have held, during the Great Recession. The AA, that is an asset allocation portfolio. So that's where you have a mix of everything. And you can see that kind of stays in the middle as well. That's going to smooth things out for you so that you don't experience the very highs and the very lows. But the point of this is you just don't know from one year to the next. The best performing asset class could very well be the worst performing the next year. So you can't jump to whatever performed the best in the past, because that doesn't mean that it's going to perform best in the future. I hope that this has been helpful for you and that you're going to take away something from this, and bookmark this video, save this video, so that in the future, when you want to go in and you want to mess with your allocations, you watch this and you say to yourself, you know what? Maybe it's a good idea that I don't do what I'm about to do, and I either talk to somebody, throw my ideas off with somebody, or I just hold off and see if it still makes sense. Now, I'm not saying that you don't make allocation changes, that you don't rebalance, that there aren't moves that you should make in your portfolio. I'm not saying set it and forget it, but just always have a strategy and always look at it from a place of it being a long-term investment so that you're not making rash, irrational decisions that might end up costing you big time over the long run. All right, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you have not done so already. Hit that like button, I appreciate it. Make sure to check out schoolofpersonalfinance.com, join my email list. I send out emails every time I post a new video or a new blog article, or I update my website, keep you in the loop with everything. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.